Prince Harry had endured distance, public criticism, broken conversations, and strained appearances. But nothing prepared him for this. Behind the guarded walls of the monarchy, King Charles made a decision that transformed family tension into something brutally official. Harry was no longer merely outside the working royal circle. He had been formally barred from every private royal ceremony reserved for the king's intimate family and household. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Harry read the wording twice, and the second reading hurt more than the first. Charles had approved an internal directive, meaning a written palace instruction guiding how the royal household acts, blocking his younger son from closed family commemorations, private chapel services, memorial observances, household investiture gatherings, and invitation-only royal rites, unless the king personally chose otherwise. This was not another missed dinner or awkward absence. It was a standing rule. For Harry, that difference turned distance into something official and painfully personal. Charles felt the weight of it too. The king sat quietly after approving it, knowing this was not an order aimed at a distant relative, but at his own son. He set the pen beside the document and delayed passing it away, as though seconds might soften what had already been decided. Yet the monarch did not withdraw the instruction. He believed the private life of the crown had become too fragile to survive another breach of trust. Harry focused on one phrase above all others: private ceremonies of the sovereign and household. The sovereign means the reigning monarch, while the royal household is the family and staff supporting the king's duties. That wording mattered because it reached far beyond public events. It touched the hidden rituals where families grieve, remember, worship, and gather without cameras. Suddenly, Harry understood he might be excluded from moments connected not to duty, but to memory. Then came the clause that cut deepest. Every future exception rested with Charles personally. Harry could no longer assume blood-guaranteed entry. He would need his father's direct permission to cross those private thresholds again. The decision gave the king control, but it also placed every future family moment beneath one unresolved question. Would Charles ever choose to open the door? William learned the order's breadth before the palace settled into silence. The prince understood this was bigger than protocol, because a permanent restriction could reshape the brothers' relationship as much as the father-son bond. His concern forced Charles toward an explanation he had avoided giving in full. And that explanation reached back to the moment family trust finally truly broke. Strip away the uniforms, security convoys, titles, and palace gates, and the crisis suddenly becomes painfully ordinary. Charles is a father who believes reconciliation repeatedly collapsed. William is a brother torn between memory and responsibility. Harry is a son convinced that distance has hardened into punishment. Yet beneath all three perspectives lies the same uncomfortable truth. Each man believes he has already compromised more than the others understand. Harry feels the loss in places outsiders rarely see. Prince Harry grew up inside private chapel moments, family commemorations, quiet anniversaries, and gatherings where rank mattered less than blood. A private royal ceremony is simply a closed family or household event, away from public attendance and official spectacle. To him, being removed from those moments does not feel like losing a job. It feels like losing a piece of home. Charles carries a different fear. King Charles must divide the instincts of a father from the duties of a sovereign, the person who formally reigns as monarch. He believes private ceremonies must remain safe places where relatives can grieve, remember, and speak, without worrying that intimate details might escape. Yet the king also knows that every restriction placed on Harry risks making reconciliation harder, and that knowledge has haunted him before. William feels the conflict almost physically. Prince William stands near a palace window after learning the full breadth of the order, disturbed by the thought that future family rituals may carry an obvious absence. The prince remembers ceremonies he once shared with Harry when they were younger. Those memories do not erase their bitterness, but they make the future king understand how permanent exclusion could harden distance into something far worse. Harry refuses to treat the ban as a technical matter. He asks whether Charles truly wants him absent from moments tied to grandparents, childhood memories, and private mourning. The question cuts deeper than any debate over protocol, because Harry is not asking whether the monarchy trusts him. He is asking whether his father still sees a place for him inside the family when nobody else is watching. Charles had resisted this road before. Advisors previously suggested clearer boundaries around Harry's access, but the king refused a permanent prohibition because he feared creating a wound that could never close. William noticed that hesitation disappearing weeks before the order. In one private conversation, Charles became unusually firm and said the family could not survive another breach of trust. William remembered those words because they did not sound theoretical. Harry did not yet know what incident they referred to, but Charles certainly did. And once that forgotten ceremony is reconstructed, the king's decision stops looking sudden, because one deeply personal moment had already pushed father and son toward a point from which neither knew how to retreat. Every royal rupture has a moment people later identify as the point of no return. For Charles and Harry, that moment came not during a televised appearance or public interview, but inside a ceremony nobody outside the family knew had taken place. No crowds were watching, no microphones were present. Yet what happened afterward convinced Charles that even the monarchy's most private spaces were no longer protected. Charles had allowed Prince Harry to attend a private family remembrance service inside St. George's Chapel as an act of goodwill. The chapel is a royal church at Windsor where the family gathers for worship, remembrance, and personal ceremonies. Attendance was limited to senior relatives and trusted household staff. The king wanted no spectacle, no message, and no hint that the gathering was anything other than a private family moment. Harry understood the sensitivity. Phones were kept away, staff numbers were reduced, and the service included personal readings and memories, never intended to travel beyond those walls. Afterward, King Charles spoke with his son alone near a side doorway and told him he hoped moments like this could become the beginning of rebuilding trust. Harry answered quietly that he wanted the same thing. For a moment, father and son appeared to have found common ground. Then the details escaped. Charles learned within days that details of the ceremony were circulating outside the family. A private reading had been described. Even the positions of relatives inside the chapel had been repeated with unsettling accuracy. The king felt humiliated because the service had been protected precisely to avoid this outcome. Harry, meanwhile, became the focus of suspicion, not because proof had emerged, but because trust around him had already been damaged by years of conflict. Harry denied responsibility when the concern reached him through a private palace conversation. He insisted he had not disclosed the service and felt he was being condemned because the family no longer knew how to trust him. Charles did not directly accuse his son of leaking anything. That made the situation more painful, not less. The monarch's fear was broader. Whenever Harry entered a confidential royal space, uncertainty followed him, and uncertainty was now enough to change the rules. Charles closed the briefing folder that evening and told an aide that the next private ceremony would be protected differently. The words sounded administrative, but they were not. Harry did not yet know that this promise would become the permanent order now shutting him out entirely. But when Harry finally discovers that unresolved suspicion has been turned into formal punishment, he refuses to let courtiers speak for him and demands the reasoning directly from his father. The confrontation begins without shouting. That makes it worse. Harry enters expecting a difficult conversation, but Charles has already decided what he can and cannot reconsider. With no cameras, no public audience, and no ceremonial smiles to hide behind, father and son finally confront the question beneath years of royal conflict: whether their relationship still exists independently of the institution surrounding them. Harry secures a meeting with King Charles and watches the aides withdraw until only the two of them remain. The private audience, meaning a closed meeting with no public or ceremonial role, strips away distance between them. The king explains that the restriction is meant to protect confidential family ceremonies from uncertainty, disruption, and mistrust. He insists the decision concerns access, not love, and that Harry is still his son. Harry refuses to accept that distinction. He tells Charles that family and royal family cannot be separated when the events being withheld involve their own relatives, their own memories, and their own grief. The younger son asks how he is supposed to mourn naturally if every private gathering now requires permission from the father standing across from him. Charles answers that responsibility still exists inside a family, but Harry hears only a boundary where belonging used to be. Charles looks down when the question comes. Harry pushes his chair back and asks, "Do you still see me as your son when these doors close?" The king pauses long enough for the silence to become painful. Then he says being his son does not erase consequences. Harry stiffens. Charles does not raise his voice, but the answer lands harder than anger because it confirms that affection and access have now been deliberately separated. Charles then returns to the private remembrance service at St. George's Chapel. The chapel incident, he says, destroyed what little confidence remained after recognizable details from the ceremony reached people outside the family. The king does not accuse Harry of leaking them. He says something colder. He can no longer expose intimate royal moments to uncertainty. Harry insists again that he disclosed nothing, but Charles makes clear that the decision is now based on damaged trust, not proof of one act. Harry asks the final question he has been avoiding. How long does the ban last? Charles gives no date, no 6 months, no year, no scheduled review. The absence of an ending hurts more than the order itself. Harry leaves furious, wounded, and convinced his father has chosen the crown over blood. But before the palace can absorb the confrontation, Prince William asks to see Charles alone, fearing that permanent exclusion could damage far more than one relationship. To Harry, the ban feels like a machine closing around him. Courtiers, protocols, security officials, and ancient palace rules combining to erase his place inside the family. But the uncomfortable reality is simpler. One person authorized the decision. One person can revoke it. And when William privately questions whether the palace has gone too far, Charles makes unmistakably clear where the final authority rests. William enters the room, knowing he cannot defend Prince Harry without acknowledging everything that came before. The sovereign, meaning the reigning monarch who holds final authority over the royal household, has personally approved the restriction. Palace staff can enforce it, but they cannot rewrite it. The prince tells Charles that consequences may be necessary, yet a permanent ban risks turning discipline into emotional exile. The king listens without interruption, and that silence makes the exchange feel heavier. Charles does not answer with anger. He removes his glasses, rubs his eyes, and tells William that every compromise has demanded another compromise. Private royal ceremonies, he explains, are closed family gatherings where personal grief, religious observance, and confidential conversations are protected from public exposure. To the monarch, controlling attendance is not about spectacle. It is about creating one place where relatives can speak without wondering who might later repeat what was said. William pushes carefully. Prince William reminds his father that Harry is not an ordinary guest and that exclusion carries consequences beyond protocol. The future king warns that if the restriction becomes permanent, the family may one day discover that the boundary protected the institution while destroying the relationship. Charles hears him, but the king does not retreat. Instead, he admits that several advisors favored a narrower rule, limiting Harry only from the most sensitive gatherings. Charles chose something broader. King Charles wanted uncertainty removed completely, because he no longer trusted case-by-case arguments to protect the household. Yet one clause remains entirely his. The monarch can personally invite Harry to any private ceremony at any time. That means the door is not sealed forever. But it also means Harry must depend on a direct invitation from the same father who ordered the ban, placing reconciliation and access inside Charles's hands. William understands what that means. The exception offers hope, but it also turns every future invitation into a personal judgment. Then the first test arrives. A private family observance is already approaching, and the invitation list must be finalized. Harry would once have assumed his place without asking. Now his name is absent, unless Charles intervenes. And when that list moves forward without Harry, the king's order stops being theory, because one empty place is about to make the family separation impossible to ignore. Rules become real when someone notices the empty space they create. At the first private ceremony following Charles's order, there is no public announcement that Harry is missing. No statement is issued. No official explains the absence. Yet inside the gathering, relatives know exactly why he is not there, and hundreds of miles away, Harry understands that the ban has moved from paper into lived reality. Charles enters the private family observance, knowing the new rule is being tested. A private observance is a closed family gathering for remembrance or reflection, away from public ceremony. William and Queen Camilla are present, but Harry has received no invitation. The household no longer debates travel, timing, or security arrangements. Unless the king personally intervenes, the answer is already no. Harry learns the ceremony has begun without him and feels the difference. Prince Harry places his phone face down, walks toward a window, and stays silent long enough for Meghan to understand the news before he speaks. He tells her that distance used to feel painful, but this feels deliberate. Meghan listens as he admits that being outside the working monarchy is one thing. Being kept outside family remembrance is another. William feels the absence from the other side. Prince William glances toward the place where his brother might once have stood, then looks forward without comment. The prince remembers younger years when these ceremonies required no negotiation between them. Camilla notices his restraint and says little, while the queen consort understands that Charles has achieved the clarity he wanted, but clarity has not made the room easier. Charles had almost broken his own rule that morning. King Charles asked an aide whether Harry could be invited privately at the last moment, then stopped before the message was sent. The king knew that reversing the restriction during its first test would make the entire order meaningless. He chose consistency over instinct, even as the choice forced him to confront the human cost of his authority. Harry refuses the alternative offered to him. Friends suggest he ask Charles for permission to attend future ceremonies, but he rejects the idea. To Harry, requesting access to family mourning would confirm the imbalance he finds most humiliating. His father now controls whether he belongs in moments that once required no invitation. William cannot ignore that reality after the ceremony ends. He decides the silence has gone far enough and arranges a conversation with Harry, without aides shaping the words between them. For years, the brothers have communicated through distance, anger, and people standing between them. But the turning point comes only when William and Harry finally speak, without anyone else in the room. There is no royal table between them, no king to satisfy, and no courtier waiting outside with talking points. For once, William and Harry confront each other simply as brothers. Neither expects reconciliation. Neither apologizes for everything that came before. Yet the conversation becomes the first moment in years when both men acknowledge the same painful reality. Their father's decision has made their separation impossible to ignore. William begins carefully. Prince William meets Harry without aides, private secretaries, or palace intermediaries shaping the exchange. Palace mediation means officials helping manage messages and contact between royal relatives. But this time, none of that protection exists. The prince tells his brother that Charles is terrified of losing the last spaces where the family can speak freely. To their father, confidentiality is not ceremonial vanity. It is the final shield around moments that belong only to the family. Harry listens, but the explanation does not ease the wound. Prince Harry tells William that patience is easier to preach when nobody questions whether the future king belongs in the room. His brother never has to prove that he deserves a place at family remembrance, private worship, or gatherings tied to their shared past. Harry admits that this is what hurts most. Something once guaranteed by blood now feels like permission he must earn. William does not answer defensively. The prince admits that seeing Harry absent from the recent observance felt wrong, even if he understands why Charles imposed the restriction. He says he does not want their family history reduced to a list of ceremonies one brother attended while the other was forbidden to enter. Harry hears sadness rather than judgment. And for the first time in the conversation, his anger begins to loosen. William refuses to offer false hope. He tells Harry that Charles will not reverse the order simply because it causes pain. Only a genuine rebuilding of trust could change the king's position, and that would take time, restraint, and choices neither brother can make for the other. Harry had expected pressure or promises. Instead, he receives something harsher and more useful: the truth. Harry makes his decision quietly. He will not publicly attack the ban, demand reinstatement, or turn the private wound into another open war. William understands the significance immediately. The choice does not mean forgiveness, and it does not mean agreement. It means Harry has chosen not to deepen the fracture. When the story finally reaches the public, there is no furious counterattack to dominate the headlines. Only one stark palace decision, one conspicuous absence, and an image outside Buckingham Palace that reveals exactly how divided people have become between crown and family alike. By morning, a private family rupture has become a public symbol of everything unresolved inside the House of Windsor. Commentators debate authority, loyalty, privacy, and punishment. Supporters of Charles call the decision necessary. Harry's defenders call it unnecessarily cruel. But one moment outside Buckingham Palace becomes more powerful than any studio argument, because it reduces years of royal tension to one brutal idea: a family divided by a gate. Broadcasters seize on the difference immediately. King Charles has not merely restricted Prince Harry from official duties. The order reaches private family ceremonies, the closed gatherings where relatives worship, remember, and grieve beyond public view. That distinction matters because official exclusion affects status, while private exclusion affects belonging. Buckingham Palace refuses to turn the dispute into a public fight. Officials defend the monarch's authority over household attendance, but release no details about the family conflict behind the decision. Harry's silence quickly becomes part of the story. Prince Harry issues no furious statement and launches no public attack on Charles. The restraint surprises commentators who expected another explosive response. Instead, the absence of retaliation creates a darker interpretation. Perhaps the restriction has cut deeper than previous disputes, because this time, the loss is personal rather than professional. The younger son allows the silence to stand, even while debate grows around him. Charles feels that debate differently. King Charles watches coverage describing the restriction as a father shutting his younger son out of the family. The king tightens at the wording and turns away, because he believes the decision was made to protect trust, not to erase affection. Yet he cannot control how the world reads it. Authority may explain the order, but it cannot remove the emotional image of a father deciding which door his son may enter. Then one newspaper crystallizes the entire crisis. Its front page carries Buckingham Palace's closed central gates beneath the words, "The private door closes on Harry." The headline spreads because it makes a complicated royal dispute painfully simple. Outside the palace, a small crowd gathers, and one visitor leaves two handwritten cards near the railings: "Protect the crown" and "Family first." The opposing messages quickly become symbols of the argument surrounding Charles and Harry. Still, nothing changes. Charles refuses to soften the directive, and Harry refuses to demand admission. The noise rises, then begins to fade, leaving the deeper cost untouched. And when the cameras finally move on, the real verdict emerges, not in headlines or palace protocol, but in what Charles, Harry, and William finally accept about a family they can no longer pretend is unchanged. In the end, there is no dramatic reversal. Harry is not restored to every private ceremony. Charles does not tear up the order in regret. William cannot repair years of pain with one conversation. The meaning lies in that restraint. All three men stop pretending reconciliation can exist without consequences: trust, sacrifice, and painful boundaries. Charles keeps the directive in force. King Charles does not restore automatic access, meaning Harry may attend a private royal ceremony only when the monarch makes an exception. A private royal ceremony is a closed family or household gathering, away from public duties and spectacle. The king believes protecting those spaces matters more than preserving the appearance that everyone inside the family remains united. Harry accepts the change without pretending it does not hurt. Prince Harry looks at an old photograph from a ceremony he attended when returning home meant returning to a familiar place. He sets it down without anger and admits that the version of royal belonging is gone. For him, the loss is not access. It is realizing that blood no longer guarantees a place inside every tradition that shaped his childhood. Charles confronts the cost. The king passes the room where he approved the restriction and pauses at the doorway, remembering the decision he refused to reverse. He knows the contradiction. To protect the monarchy's private family space, he has made that family smaller. The father has lost the comfort of believing distance can remain temporary forever. William becomes the bridge rather than the rescuer. Prince William keeps communication open with Harry while refusing to promise that Charles will suddenly change course. The future king understands that trust cannot be ordered back into existence. He knows silence between the brothers would make the damage worse, so he chooses contact without pretending contact equals reconciliation. Harry makes the final choice. He refuses to launch a public war over the ban, even though he believes it is unfair. Charles keeps his boundary. William keeps the line between them alive. Nobody wins cleanly. The verdict is final. Harry loses automatic access to part of his royal heritage. Charles secures control, but accepts a smaller family. And William inherits the burden of standing between them. The crown preserves its boundary, but the family pays for it. The palace doors remain closed, the order remains unchanged, and Harry walks forward, knowing where he stands. Charles chose institutional trust over automatic family access. Harry chose dignity over another public battle, and the monarchy emerged more controlled, but undeniably more divided. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.